My name is Micky. I use the pronouns he and him and they and them, and I'm from Richmond, Virginia. Um, I'm not entirely sure, but okay. So my dad's side of the family feels easier to tell than my mom's side, and I've actually told one of my cousins before, and it went okay, but like I feel like that's the barometer of how good it'll go. Um, she didn't really understand what it meant, but we're pretty close. So she just like asked me some questions that were weird, like, does this mean you're gonna go through the change and that kind of stuff? But it was like mostly fine. Um, the hard thing is deciding if I'm gonna tell all of them, because if I tell them to use a different name, then it's like, do I tell one person who then will have to explain it to other people if they call me that name out loud? So I'm not really sure what to do about that yet. I had a conversation with one of my aunts a few years ago, uh, who just randomly called me and just asked me like, I can't remember how the conversation happened, but like just asked me like, are you transgender? And then it freaked me out, and I was like, I don't know. They're not super religious, but they are religious, and I do know from one of my aunts who has changed her name for like other reasons that they don't call her that. So I feel like it could go similarly with my name. Um, and my dad's very like, I named you. So I feel like that's the route that he'll go. Um, they, that's how the family I feel like understands sexuality a lot more. It's still kind of weird, but it's mostly fine. But I feel like gender just feels like this whole thing that now I have to learn how to explain to them again. And I'm not sure how to, especially since I'm not really trying to tell them that I'm like a man now, you know? So I don't know the right words to really explain what my gender like looks like. And my mom's side is far too religious, and my aunt told me that black people aren't like gay, so I feel like I feel like gender wouldn't go that well. Oh yes. So I I grew up with my mom, and um, she like raised me, and we didn't talk for about a year, like a couple years ago, not about like sexuality or gender, but just about some other stuff. And um, then my when my grandma died, we started talking again, probably because she like didn't want to lose her mom and her child in like the same time period. So it's been hard to think about how to start talking to her about like my sexuality and my gender, because I don't want to lose her in my life again. Like for some reason with my dad it feels easier because he's like, we don't live in the same state, he's further away from me, and he's been like better about it. Well, about sexuality, I haven't talked about gender, but like he's usually better about that. But it also feels like an easier thing to do even if he was mad, because I didn't grow up with him as much, and it's like, I don't know, I don't want my mom to stop talking to me, and I just have this weird thing about like owing her, because she like did so much for me, and it just feels so much more difficult to be honest with her about my life. I mean, well, I have been like taking testosterone since October, and they haven't noticed. I just saw them like a few days ago. They didn't seem to really notice, or if they do, they probably just don't have any sort of language to really know like that it's a thing that you can do. Um, so my like vague plan was to just keep taking testosterone for a while until it's just like way too hard to hide anything, and then be like, oh yeah, by the way, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but at this point, that's just what's gonna happen. um, I don't really know. I think honestly, I feel like I'm gonna come. Uh, honestly, I feel like what's gonna happen is they're gonna do that whole like it's grammatically incorrect thing, especially because a lot of them are teachers, and they'll just act like it's not a thing. And also, a lot of my family can be very defensive, so just like me telling them about my life, they'll just ask me all these like challenging questions about it to try and like disprove all the things I'm saying. So I feel like that'll just come under that, you know? And even though I'm like 27, I feel like half the time they still treat me as if I'm like a child. So I feel like that'll still be like this thing where they act like I don't know what I'm talking about or like I'm just making things up or something. Um, and like the name I have now isn't really that different from the name I had before. So honestly, it shouldn't be that difficult. But like I feel like it will be this whole thing, which makes it hard for me to really want to talk to them about it because it just feels really exhausting to think about having to have like several different conversations with all these different people like every time I see them about like what I'm doing, what's happening to like my body, why I'm using a different name, like that whole thing. Um, no, at the most, I know that I have one of my cousins who's like, I think 19 is gay, and I told him and he's chill, so that was fine. And then I think I have like another cousin who I feel like is not straight. I haven't confirmed that, but just based on his Instagram, I just feel like he's not very straight. But that's his business. um, and like so I have an easier time, I think, thinking about telling like my cousins and stuff than the older members of my family because I feel like they won't really understand what I'm talking about. And just in a bunch of different for a bunch of different reasons, I'm like kind of disconnected from a lot of my older relatives now. So it just feels like I'm just adding stress or something to their life or I'm like it's like already hard enough to talk about regular things and I have if I haven't seen them in a long time so like just to bring this whole thing up is just this whole like thing they would have to then worry about when we aren't even all that close anymore.